Hi, my name is Patty Chan from the Center for Music Innovations, and today we have Alice Ho here and we're going to talk to Alice and get to know her better. She's a wonderful Canadian composer, and I've known her for many, many years. She was also my teacher at one point, so I'm very, very fortunate to have her here. So Alice, could you tell us something about yourself?
Thank you, Patty, for having me in your interview. My honor. I'm Chinese Canadian. I was born in Hong Kong. You know how I get into music, and I'll go back to my childhood. I was one of those privileged kids in Hong Kong that my family sent me to take ballet class. So I grew up with a lot of Tchaikovsky, Rimsky-Korsakov, like Swan Lake and all these things. But it happened, the accompanist for the ballet class, he said, "Oh, maybe you can take piano lesson after the ballet class." My parents said, "Oh, why not? You know, I can just send you out and spend more time out there." That's how it started. So I'm basically classically trained as a pianist. In my generation, that time, the education system in Hong Kong is very competitive, and everyone wants to get into university, and everyone want to be of a high profession, which they think like doctors, engineer. So for me, I admire my aunt. She is the only doctor in the family, so I was inspired. I want to be a doctor, medical doctor. But it just turned out I perhaps my marks is bad and I'm not smart enough. It turned out I get a scholarship to study music at Indiana University in the States. So that's how it started. I think when I started at Indiana, I'm a piano major, and I accidentally took some private lesson with the professor. He didn't know I can take a lesson with, I mean, a minor, not a major, with him. So he coached me for a few lessons, and then I was so inspired, and I found my calling, perhaps be a creator rather than interpreter. And also at Indiana, I was so discouraged. There are 5,000
Wow.
students, so competitive. I mean, as a performer, I mean, they're phenomenal. So I just found I have a better chance to be a composer. So that's how I started to get into music. And the other story is I met my husband, who was a PhD student that time, and then we got married. We moved to Toronto. I married a Canadian, so I become a Canadian. And then I continue my master degree at University of Toronto, studying with John Beckwith. And then I raised a family with two daughters. Now they are full-grown women with their families. And now I have more time for myself to compose.
That's wonderful. Wow, so your journey has taken you like from Hong Kong to the States and now to Canada. And so also along the way, you've studied like it's mostly a Western musical background. It's not a Chinese musical background,
Mhm.
right?
Yes, correct. When I look back, all the way, even up to my my finish my master degree in the 90s, when I started out entering competition, I have no clue what is Chinese music. I do know when I was a kid in Hong Kong, I'm exposed to Chinese music, like especially Cantonese opera and a lot of choral music,
Mhm.
which I'm familiar with a lot of the folk songs and stuff like that. But then when I study and in academic institute, it's stress on, what do you say, groundbreaking, avant-garde, complexity. My first professor in Indiana, his name is John Eaton. He is a microtonal composer. And then I also studied with Reinventing in Freiburg, Germany. He is one of the most mathematical composer in the world. So my training is definitely very European,
Uh-huh.
and it's nothing to do with my culture, my own heritage. But I guess the break is very lucky. I think I live in Toronto, and it is a multicultural city. And in the last 10 years, I get chances because of my commission. I guess the organization is interested for me to explore my own heritage and to incorporate Chinese instruments in the work. So at that time, I think maybe the first opera I wrote, The Lesson of Daichi, which Patty, you are one of the key artists there in the ensemble. It's the time that I really look seriously, know how to blend the tradition into the culture here, like a mixed ensemble, but also blending of a fresh sound. I mean, this is a very exciting discovery. From there on, this is, oh God, I have many projects and commissions that require Chinese instruments, and also assignment. I have to look into some legends, history in Canada. So that is actually really great for me, rediscovering and reinvention.
Mhm.
That's quite valuable.
I think the reinventing part is really exciting too, because it's from your own perspective. And
Correct.
yeah, it's how you look at the myths and legend and history and how you reimagine it, right? And I think that that's
Mm-hmm.
so valuable, especially living, as you said, living in Canada or living in Toronto, with so many different cultural heritage here and
Mm-hmm.
different ethnicities. So, have you been able to actually write for other ethnic instruments other than Chinese, other cultural instruments?
Uh, yes, my first opera, The Lesson of Daji, besides Chinese instruments, incorporate Baroque instrument, which is also very new to me. Before Lesson of Daji, I'm dealing with Japanese culture, taiko drums and all these things, and Japanese myths. And let me think, I think recently I have a new project, which is, I also get very excited because it's blend, what do you say, Canadian,
Hmm.
Chinese and Brazilian culture.
Wow.
It is my first concerto for one piano, four hand by a duo in Brazil with a couple of orchestra. It came through last year, but because of the pandemic, it sort of postponed. But I just finished it and doing parts.
Oh.
So it is very exciting for me to investigate Brazilian culture, which is totally like an eye opener. Their tribal things, even instruments. It's just great. I have all this opportunity
Mhm.
to explore.
And is this what you envisioned, like when you were a composition student? Like, is this what you thought you would be doing?
Not at all. I think all my training until the last 10 years, perhaps there are two sides of me. One side perhaps is a traditionalist. Depends on the project. I'm really attracted to, basic subtonality and color, which I think is a very basic connection to human.
Mhm.
And I don't want to destroy it because it's so idiomatic and so natural and so moving. This is one part of me that I'm very longing to keep that. But on the other hand, I do want to adventure, conceptual, experimental. I have project that is just pure sound electronics. I guess my style is kind of eclectic. Many years ago when I was younger, I have to confess, this is a little bit startling in a way because my training is all into that European tradition.
Hmm.
What is groundbreaking, what is new sound, and really complexity and the scores have to be spectacular and explain every single note. But then more and more, I've sort of get away from it because I really have to feel I have to write from my heart.
Right.
And I always try to find a balance between the concept, experiment, sound, tonality. I hope to blend them together in a deep and refreshing way for the audience. So yeah, I'm still learning. It is an ongoing process.
It must be very interesting to look back at all the pieces that you've composed and see how you've evolved in your composition style and everything.
When I listen to pieces, some of them shock me because, like a certain time, I write in a certain style, and I think a lot of young composers too. They're so concerned about getting grants,
Mhm.
winning competition. It depends, on the requirement of a certain thing. They tend to write in a certain style, but I think as composer, we are versatile to be all styles are great. There's no crime against any style, any practice and approach. But I guess it's exciting for one to open up and push themselves out of the comfort zone.
Right, right, right.
Yeah.
So, like, I've been doing a lot of workshops at different universities to composition students, and I was wondering if you have any advice, like, to these young composers that are just like they're starting to explore, and but they're still in school. So, would you have
Mhm.
any advice for them as to how, like, what to do or what, I guess, in what direction to go?
Really write from your heart. For young composers, they should realize how lucky, when they're involved in a workshop, they're working with professionals, performers, and experts for the Chinese instrumentalists. They should take the opportunity to learn and write, and also hear what they have create. That is the most important thing. I think composing in the dark always, like an impressive score, but when you hear the music, it gives you a totally different scenario. Nowadays, the technology is wonderful, like notation program and the sound software. It is so exciting and actually give us the tools to get where we are faster and more effective. But on the other hand, it also gives us the illusion whether it is practical or actually achievable. So I think it's important for young composers to open up themselves and talk to performers, especially, and talk to the masters in a certain music traditions, to understand. Yeah, just have an open mind. There's nothing wrong to write in any style, but I think it's most important to hear the music and write something that actually satisfy yourself the most at the end.
Right. Oh, that sounds very encouraging. Is that, I guess, looking back now, is that what you would say to your young self when you were in school?
So I think for many years, I actually started very late. I would say, even though I was a composition major, graduate in the late 80s, and I sort of stopped for many years because I have a family to raise and I didn't really get into composing. And when I get back to it, I'm actually lost because I have no performance opportunities and I just started from scratch. So I just have to keep trying. And a lot of the time it's frustrating because at that time I actually write by hand. I didn't even use a computer until I think 2004. I don't even have a computer. So a lot of this thing is handwritten. I think the first break is I won the competition in the Winnipeg New Music Festival for young composers, orchestra composition. At that time, I have a piece which I still write by hand.
Wow.
And I think in a way, when I look back, I appreciate the miscalculation, the pacing and all. But on the other hand, I also appreciate the raw creativities. You don't actually hear it, but you just imagine the sound. So there's more imagination in that way.
Right.
So it's in a way, it's for me, when I look back at my old pieces, I always okay. Right now, I have a luxury. I can transcribe and notate it back, and I would say improve it. But at that time, maybe it's good enough. I think for young composer, and my advice is, when you love something, regardless, you just have the impulse or the passion to write, just keep trying. And I think the most important thing is, again, is a satisfaction to yourself. Actually, recently, I have a few composition students, and I have one student, which get me quite excited. She is a school teacher, and she has no formal training in, instrumentation. But I think she's quite talented because every week she produces a couple of pieces. I'm amazed. And I think that keep her going is just to satisfy herself. She writes songs and gradually writing some strings. And so my share is just to encourage her, because the basic thing for anyone to love is what is there. It's a great, beyond a hobby, is a passion. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that would be very encouraging to students to hear, and especially like when you do give them encouragement, because I think you do need that, especially at the very beginning. Yeah, because as a student, you're also quite unsure of yourself too.
Right. Yeah, I think as a teacher, of course, you have the responsibility to guide them and actually educate them as much, with techniques and things that will make it better. But on the other hand, I think encouragement is really important. I think one should not be discouraged in what they pursue. And I think everyone has a special talent, and I don't think it should be any judgment whether it is in the right style.
Yeah, that's good. So Can you tell us a little bit about some upcoming projects that you're involved in? I hear there's something exciting.
Yeah, I think I want to talk about is this a new opera that am commissioned by City Opera Vancouver with the renowned Canadian writer Madeline Thien. The title is Chinatown. It is a 2 hours opera, and it involves the neighborhood story, the generation starting from the building of the CPR. Of course, Chinatown is always has been a special neighborhood to the Chinese community. But this opera is so special to me because, first of all, I'm a fan of Madeline. She is one of the most admirable young writer that, I read her book, and her writing is so moving. It's deal with human natures. It go with three generations. It's love story, but not only romantic love. It deal with families, neighborhoods, history, racism, which is still, is an ongoing thing.
Yeah.
At that time, there's, the hashtags, the many things that happened with the discrimination of Chinese immigrants. But it sort of evolved at the end, which is like elevate, the human spirit. So this is so special to me. This is the first ever Thien, I think,
Oh,
Thaisanese English Canadian opera.
wow. That is very groundbreaking.
Yeah, and it's such an honor to work with another writer, Paul Yi. He is the translator of Thien. I brought up with some, association with Haisanese language. I think a lot of Chinese will associate that dialect with workers and nannies, not a very respectable because it's the southern province. But in this opera, it's so real because that dialect is actually the period that people speak, the immigrant.
Yeah.
And it was so amazing that the first 7 scenes, the first act, all in Haisanese.
Wow.
And it's such a challenge because I constantly have to work with audio tape. Paul has sent me, Cantonese has the same problem. When you have a little bit off the inflation, that is like mean totally.
Yeah, it's a totally different word.
Yeah. But then I learned so much. Actually, it's such a musical language. And I think it's beautiful that we rediscover this dialect in a different context. And I think there's another tradition called the Mukyu. It's a kind of a Thailand folk song, a verbally tradition. And Madeline elevate that into sort of the chief narrator on the whole opera. And it's also blend with the a tribute to the, the male workers in that day mostly are men. Their family cannot come to Canada. There's a ghost chorus of men. It's just wonderful. All I have created in the past, all my opera, the 2 opera that I wrote, The Lesson of Daji and The Monkey's King, all deal with Chinese fables. And this one is a real thing. It sort of prepare me one step forward to the next project. So honored that I'm chosen to be the composer. I just feel so lucky.
Oh, that's amazing. It sounds really exciting. I hope to one day see it. When will it be performed? Right, you're mentioning that they postponed it due to the pandemic, right? It'll be
yes. Yeah, I don't have the exact date. It's September, I think the 18th to the 22nd or 22nd at the Vancouver Playhouse next year. We'll have workshops this year, and I try to do a little promotion events in Toronto in the next Asian Heritage Month to introduce some excerpts and introduce to the to the audience all across Canada, because this is such an important story
exactly.
To all of us.
Yeah, especially now with the rising anti-Asian crimes and things like that. So will it ever be performed in Toronto, or?
I hope so. We don't know. I think there's so much a buzz again. I mean, for this opera already, I think they get a lot of support, and we get really great singers. I think the two main roles were cast there in Europe. There's very, a lot of talent, and some of the singers I worked with before too. Yeah. So yeah, it's just all Asian cast. Yeah, and they also blend with the Chinese community. I think the opening, literate opening, they have all this, events with the older folks living in Chinatown with dinners and special performance for them, and outreach program. I think opera should not be just an elite thing. I think it should be to all generations and all of us.
Right. And this is also a history that not everybody knows about. And I think it's really great that this will kind of shine a light on this period of history and help us understand better the Chinese Canadian history, right? So I think it's very valuable.
Yes, so although it's a story, but it's still so real. Deal with the history happening at that time. There are paper boys, and there's the pet tags. I think Madeline Thien just deal with human nature. It evolved 3 generations. The kind of true love, friendship, without boundary, and how the Chinese community are bond together, and their resilience, and to overcome hardship. This racism is resurgent, like right now, all the time, actually. So I think it's important that we look back and learn, and also in a poetic and beautiful way that people actually enjoy. Like,
right.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious, how do you work with Madeline? Like to come up to create this huge work. She's not living nearby, right?
No, she's in Montreal.
Yeah. So how did you manage to collaborate? And
I think maybe I should mention how I got this.
Okay, sure.
Commission. So I think last March, I got a long email from City Opera Vancouver, which I have no association before. They want me to audition. I think there are about 4 or 5 Canadian composers across Canada. They would pay a fee for us to write 2 scenes from the opera. The libretto already written.
Okay.
I think for City Opera Vancouver, this is always their mandate. They have the libretto, the story, already planned and set, and they look for the composer. In the past, they have a few opera, they're all done this way. So I am one of those composers and being recruited to write. And I think one scene is Hoi San duet between two male singers, and one is just an aria. So after that, I passed the first round, and they asked me to send more music of my that related to Chinese instrument, that proved that I can write for the Chinese instrument.
Okay.
And the third round is I have a phone interview with Madeline.
Oh.
But Madeline is so sweet. She's so nice. I think at the beginning, I was a bit anxious that I hope, with the other composers too, we all hope to get this commission because it's such an important commission. And I'm so lucky and privileged that they choose me at the end. And then off and on, I'll communicate with Madeline. I think basically the libretto is there, and the Hoi San dialect, I will communicate with Paul. And then maybe just a little bit here and there, I would discuss with her, perhaps with the pacing, perhaps there could be some change. I need a bit more text there, and perhaps we should shorten to make the opera more propel, the momentum thing. And they are just a fantastic team.
Oh.
And I think the last production meeting, I also saw the staging designed by Camilla Koo. She is very talented. I think she designed it, the Monkey is King.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah, and it is just breathtaking. The stage design, we're so impressed. So it is, I think we are in such good hands, and I'm really excited for the production, of course.
Yes, it sounds amazing for sure. And I think, like, especially the fact that it's in Toisan, like it will really be authentic, because that's really what was spoken back then.
Right. I was actually very nervous too at the beginning. How I approached to make it authentic and understood, and also poetic, because this is an opera, and I think we have the license to beautify it, not in the raw state. And I hear the Mok Yu tradition is very raw, kind of in that tradition is kind of folk, not very singable, and basically is a narration. So I hope I justify at the end with all this the setting of the text, and yeah, and I'm curious the what the Toisan speaking
Yeah,
people.
yeah. Like my parents are Toisan, so I
Right.
think it would be really amazing for them to hear it actually,
Uh-huh.
um, performed, and to hear
Right.
their own dialects, on stage. I think that would be
Hmm.
really amazing.
Yeah, I think like Paul E and a lot of my a few writers are so excited about bringing Toisan dialect in an opera. This is really beautiful, and I think so far Paul approved.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, and because I think the Toisan also a little bit similar to Cantonese, quite pentatonic too, and I think it's even a bit more musical. I found the story for Madeline Star is in a way it's not even vulgar. It's so gentle and so to the heart.
Hmm.
So I hope it's something new for us to appreciate. At that time, how the workers, the immigrant, how their mental state and how they enjoy in a way
Right,
a new life, and how they're longing and how they're despair and all this complexity
right.
all came along, hopefully.
Yeah. So yeah, this is very very much the first in Canada that they're doing something like this. Yeah. So I actually like everybody to find out more about this. So I think will you be posting things on your website?
I try.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I
So yeah,
yeah, I think there's a website. If we go to City Opera Vancouver.ca or something, they will have a posting of the description of the opera,
mm,
and I think they will constantly update it, and yeah, I'll keep everyone posted.
yeah. And what is your website address so that people can find you?
Oh, my website is Alice ALICE Ho HO .com. So
Okay.
AlicePYHO.com.
Okay. So yeah, our audience would probably love to look up more of your works and find out more about what's happening with you. And
Yeah,
I
thank
just
you.
want to say thank you for all the time that you spent to share about your life and share about all the works that you've been working on. Yeah, and congratulations on all that you've done. It's
Oh,
quite
thank you,
quite
Patty. Thank
awesome.
you for having me. Yeah, always a pleasure to chat with you.
Yeah, maybe we'll catch up
And
again.
looking forward to work with you too.
Yeah,
Very new feature.
yeah, and well,
Yeah.
hopefully we can have another conversation later on down the road too.
Yes, that by all means.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll talk to you another time.
Okay. All
Thank
right.
you.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.